So welcome everyone. I'm super excited to be here today and to have more of an interactive workshop and talk about mapping your 2021 lead generation strategy and really looking at, as I hinted at before, what channels are right for you and your firm right now based on the current constraints you have in the business, whether it's time, money, or team. So let's see. So just to recap some of the learnings that we've had over the past sessions, marketing is really a numbers game. We're talking about needing a certain number of qualified eyeballs to get a certain number of qualified leads to get a certain number of clients. So today we're really going to talk about how do we get those qualified eyeballs and what channels are we going to be pursuing to get them. So my goal is to make your firm growth simpler by making online marketing simpler. I think sometimes it can be really overwhelming because we hear, oh, you should be on Facebook ads. Oh, you should be on SEO, doing SEO. Oh, you should be doing direct mail. Oh, you should be doing social media marketing. And sometimes we can feel like we're spread so thin and maybe not doing as good of a job as we'd like with some of the marketing channels at our disposal, or we think they're not driving the right results for our business. So here we've been talking about in these marketing mentor sessions, a three-pronged approach to generate more leads, better leads, and more sales ready leads. And in the past two sessions, we have focused heavily on lead qualification and lead nurturing. So if you haven't seen those sessions, I definitely recommend watching the recordings. They're really great and will give you a really good foundation so that as we're driving more leads, as we're driving more eyeballs to your marketing assets, you're qualifying those leads and you're nurturing those leads, which in turn brings in more clients. So today we're going to talk all about lead generation and how to identify and prioritize the lead gen channels that you should be focusing on. So I'd love to know in the chat, where do most of your leads currently come from as far as you know? So I know sometimes it's difficult to track. Sometimes it's just an informal conversation with a lead and you say, where did you find me? And that's where you kind of have an idea of where they've come from. Yep, Shireen, Google, great. But just your best guess, word of mouth and internet, very common, yeah. I'm sure a lot of people here get a lot of referrals, great. Website, interesting, Ed. So they're finding your website. Somehow we just don't know how they're finding it. If they're telling you, hey, I saw your website, but they may be coming from Google, they may be coming from a personal referral. Yep, great. Okay, so a lot of common themes here. Awesome. Okay, so one of the questions I get all the time is, what is the best channel for generating leads? And as I hinted at before, I really don't believe there's a one size fits all formula. So it's really about what's the best channel for your firm, not what's the best channel across the board. Because for one firm, Facebook ads might be their best channel, and for you, it may be Google. So we're really looking at, in this instance, not what's the best channel across the board, but what's going to be the best channel for you. Okay, so how do you figure out what channels to focus on? It's pretty simple. We identify where your target audience spends their time and money, and then we meet them there. So this may feel a bit simplistic in its description, but it's actually, in many ways, it is that simple. So for example, for anyone who's saying Google, in this case, your target audience is searching for your services on Google and you are meeting them there with your listing, right? Or, you know, if I'm looking at referrals. Okay, so again, your target audience is spending money with whoever's being, you know, time or money with whoever's referring them to you. So that's why they're coming to your firm. So the key here is, if you don't know who your target audience is, it becomes really difficult to generate leads. If you don't know who you're targeting, how do we know where they're spending time and money? And sometimes I find that people go way too broad on their target audience, especially when we're thinking about lead gen channels, or they're focusing on everyone, and it becomes really hard to be everywhere and be everything to everyone. So when you're thinking about your lead gen, honing in on a specific target market with a specific problem helps you get more bang for your buck. And I know Cara can probably speak to this because I know firms have different specialties. So this can be a little bit of a challenge because not only do you have to be where your target audience is in terms of personal injury, but maybe you also have to be where they are looking for a criminal attorney, and that can spread your firm pretty thin. So Car, maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, Lauren, I think you're exactly right. And that is, wherein lies the challenge, right? Is especially we have lots of multi-specialty firms, right? So kind of juggling that, figuring out, which channels work best. Certainly, that first step is figuring out where they are. So I do hear that from the attorneys that I speak with, some that are on this call, in fact, where they might have small budgets and both money and time wise, right? And they really want to kind of maximize that effort. And the first step is kind of just figuring out where they are. So it's definitely can be a challenge, but tailoring that experience, tailoring that marketing channel for your specific specialty will certainly yield better results, right?
Yeah. So in many ways, you're going to have a lead gen strategy for each target market you have. And if you feel like, hey, I have limited time and budget, don't we all? You may consider starting with one specialty with your lead gen channel and lead gen strategy, and really honing in on that and getting that working really well, and then moving on to the next target market. That can be a way to really focus your efforts and get more bang for your buck, especially if you're targeting many different types of people. So that's one thing to consider as we're moving through this workshop. And Leonard, yes, there will be a replay link. Okay, so I'd love to know if you had to pick your target audience right now, especially if you have multiple specialties, or if you know who your target audience is, I'd love to just see in the chat, who you're serving and what your specialty is.
I know we have a couple family law firms on the call, I see. Definitely a few personal injury.
Yep.
Ryan's SSD, yep.
Okay. So another thing to consider in this is personal injury cases involving motor vehicles. Great. So I really love that, Mark, because you're not, you're getting really narrow within personal injury, which makes it even more specific, which then makes your lead gen strategy a lot easier to pursue. So sometimes even looking at all your clients and saying, which are my best clients, or which are the ones I love serving, and looking at, can I narrow in even further on what problems they're facing, can make lead gen online a whole lot easier to start with. Okay, bankruptcy, age range 25 to 54, criminal charges. Okay, great. You guys have lots of good stuff here. Kevin, that's super specific. I love that. Okay. Now the pushback I often get with asking a business owner or law firm to get really specific with their target audience is, okay, but I can help all of these different kinds of people. So why wouldn't I pursue everyone, or why wouldn't I pursue everyone within personal injury? And that's great. We're not saying that you should turn away that kind of work. But what I am saying is when we're thinking about lead gen and what type of strategy we're going to pursue, being specific helps you be remembered. And it also helps prospects say, yes or no, I fit in that bucket or I don't. So for example, you may get a referral that's sort of related to your target audience, and it may be someone you can help, so you would bring them on board. But in terms of what we're pushing out online, the more specific you can get, the more successful and an easier time you'll have generating leads.
And Lauren, to that point too, kind of niching down and further defining, your target audience and really just the ideal case that you're looking for. Who can you really help, right? Taking a moment to just really think about that. And, the more specific that you're able to get, the easier it becomes to create content that's geared, directly, more sort of tailored toward that group. It makes it easier to attract the type of client that you're looking for. So it's really kind of this holistic approach of, you can't help everyone. You don't want to help everyone, right? And, this is kind of that first step, and also screening some of those inquiries that come through as well.
And it makes you a lot easier to refer. You know, I might know 10 personal injury attorneys and I don't know which one's going to be the right fit for, you know, my friend who's looking for a personal injury attorney. But if you say, hey, I help people who have a personal injury from a motor vehicle, I know exactly whether you're the right fit and you're going to come top of mind to me. So it's another really valuable reason for niching down. It just makes you more memorable. Okay, so we're going to do a little exercise right now. I'm going to have you guys draw on a piece of paper in front of you, just a grid like this. At the top, you're going to put time and money. And at the bottom, you're going to put online and offline. And this is just a brainstorming exercise. So here, you're just thinking about your target market and thinking, where do they spend their time online? Where do they spend their money online? Where do they spend their time offline? And where do they spend their money offline? And as you're doing this brainstorm, I don't want you to judge any of the ideas that you're putting down as good or bad. I just want you to be putting yourself in your target market's shoes and understand and trying to see, okay, where do they spend their time and money? And we're trying to get creative here. Oftentimes it may or may not be related to your service. Like, for example, Kevin, I'm looking at criminal, suburban, they're making 100K plus. Okay, so maybe they have a gym membership and that's where they're spending their money offline, right? So I'm just thinking about where are some of the places that we could potentially meet them. So I'd love for you guys to take a couple minutes to do this. And if you have any questions as you're brainstorming ideas, drop them in the chat. And I'd love to hear some of the ideas that you're coming up with.
Hey, Lauren, and while they're working on that, what do you recommend if, you know, someone might not know where to start even, right? So maybe they're, you know, recently launched their firm, or maybe they're kind of pivoting in, you know, especially during the pandemic. I'm talking to a ton of attorneys who are kind of pivoting into a new area. You know, what if they don't really know, you know, that's even just like, you know, it's kind of a brand new world. What do you think is kind of that first step?
Yeah. So the first step, in my opinion, is to get on the phone with some potential people who fit that target market and just chat with them for 20 minutes, learn a little more about their problems. The more you understand your target audience, the easier this exercise gets. And that's why it gets hard when you're brand new or pivoting, because you're not yet as familiar with your target audience. So in that case, the more people you can talk to, the better. There are some ways to do some research online. So we have Google at our disposal. We have YouTube at our disposal. We have Quora at our disposal. We have Pinterest. These are all search engines. And so you could start to type in some basic search words like personal injury attorney in Google, and you'll see a list of suggested terms that come up, and that may start to give you an idea. But honestly, that doesn't give you an idea of where they spend their time or money offline. That may be a more direct lead gen route than Google, if that makes sense. So my recommendation is, if there's any way to get on the phone with 3 to 5 people that you've either served in the past, are considering serving now, or maybe you even have a friend who's an attorney in the same space, and you can jump on a call with them and talk to them a little bit about the target audience and some of their pain points. That would be my best recommendation. Oftentimes, I find people skip market research because we have other things to do. It feels a little tedious. It feels like it's not going to be very fruitful. But again, the more you know your target audience, the better lead gen strategy you'll be able to craft. And oftentimes there's surprising places where no one else is playing that you can go, you know, get visible in and start to bring more leads your way. And there's not a whole lot of competition there. Yeah, so Shireen says shops on Amazon, which is really interesting. I'm just looking, Cara, do you know Shireen's specialty off the top of your head? I'm looking through the chats.
I should, because I know Shireen.
Bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy, yeah. Thanks, Shireen.
Yeah. So they're shopping a lot. Yeah. Okay. That's really creative. Yeah, so the short answer is there's really no shortcut to market research besides getting on the phone. And I find the phone is the fastest way to gather a lot of information quickly. Can you tell me a little more about some of the pivots that you're hearing about, Cara? Because that would be helpful.
Yeah, so specifically, I actually just talked to an attorney yesterday, a couple days ago, I guess, moving into bankruptcy. Traditionally, actually was practicing in family law. Sees some opportunity in the pandemic to, he's kind of brushing up on his Chapter 7s and Chapter 13s and really, saw that opportunity and is actually using our program, using Marketing Amplifier to, as kind of an out of the box solution to really kind of help him make that shift. He had been marketing, investing in sort of organic SEO, some blog posts, some content creation in the family law space, and is kind of trying to get something going in bankruptcy. I'm also seeing a lot of firms starting to offer estate plans as well. So as the pandemic, kind of brings up, those types of thoughts in people, the estate plans, just adding on the estate plan, even just that service has been a nice little, pivot and sort of even an upsell opportunity for some firms as well.
Yeah, great. So when I think about maybe unconventional places that people are spending their time and money in both of those arenas, I think estate plans, I think about, okay, we're in the pandemic. People are maybe visiting some doctors, and that's why these thoughts are coming up, because maybe someone's sick in the family and they're like, oh shoot, I don't really have my, my back house in order. So, I think about, okay, maybe I think about some of the local medical institutions that may be advising some of their patients, hey, make sure you have an estate plan in place, or do you have a medical directive? Those sort of things. Or even if I think about the family to bankruptcy, there may be some really interesting overlap there. Is I'm helping families with their bankruptcy plans, or I'm helping business owners with their bankruptcy plans, but oftentimes the business owner also has a family. And so there may be some places offline or online, daycare, schools, where the mother and father are spending their time, but you may be able to get some sort of in there from a lead gen strategy standpoint. So while we're talking about online marketing, and there's certainly traditional channels that we all know people spend time on, Instagram, Facebook, and Google, the point of this exercise is to get a little more creative. And sometimes it's hard to come up with a lot of ideas right off the bat. So I encourage you to take this exercise and just have this little chart by your desk, and then periodically write down some ideas here, because it requires getting a bit creative and really putting yourself in the target market's shoes. Okay. So from here, I just want to remind you briefly of the 5 stages of awareness, which we've talked about. But we are really, when we're thinking about lead gen strategy, we are not looking for people who are unaware of their problem or not looking for a solution. We're looking for people who have a problem and are looking for a solution. So when you think about your target market and you're thinking about, for example, Shireen, I'm looking for people who are aware that they may be facing bankruptcy and they're shopping on Amazon. We're not looking at all business owners on Amazon ever who may or may not be facing bankruptcy, if that makes sense. It gets too broad and it's really hard to be specific there enough to craft a compelling lead gen strategy that won't require an enormous amount of time and budget. So one thing to consider as you're thinking through some of these offline and online channels is, where are people spending time and money when they're problem aware, when they understand that they're facing an issue? Okay, so some considerations as we craft your lead gen strategy are, what are the resources required for each channel that we're going to be considering? how much time is involved, how much money is involved, how many people need to be involved, what kind of people need to be involved, what skill sets do they need to have? Is this going to be an outsourced or in-house effort? And can we take that on? And then what are the risks? Meaning, how long is it going to take for this strategy to bear fruit? Is it a pretty surefire strategy, or is it kind of an experiment and we're really not sure if this is going to pay off in the long run? And I would argue most of marketing is an experiment, and you're gathering feedback and then doubling down on what works. But you do want to hedge your bets a little bit and say, hey, this is a proven path, or I know this will pay off within a year. So these are some things to consider as we're looking at what lead gen channels do I want to focus on this year. Okay, so you guys will get a copy of this recording because I think this is a really valuable chart for you to look at as you're thinking about what are the possible channels I can explore for my business and which ones are going to be right for me. So I'm going to go through line by line each of these items, and I'll have Cara and maybe Mike chime in a little bit. But these are kind of all the possible lead gen channels you can look at for your business. Yes, you will get, I can send a copy of this chart. How's that? Richard, I think this is the most valuable one for you because the rest is just a few questions. So we're going to go through each channel, and then we're going to talk through some of the skill sets needed, the budget required, the time required, and who would be doing this on your firm. So first of all, partnerships and business development. So there's a lot of ways we can slice and dice this, but essentially you're taking that word of mouth and really dialing it up, those referrals, by leveraging partnerships who serve your audience already, your target market, and then using them as a referral channel. So just like we talked about earlier, where we're looking at where people are spending their time and money and meeting them there, that's what partnerships are doing. So for example, let's say the local accountant is also serving your audience. You would build a partnership with them, and then they would refer qualified prospects your way. So when we're thinking about skill sets needed here, you just need to be able to talk and build a relationship with someone. So there's not a lot of higher education needed, if you will. Like you don't need to have an advanced degree in Facebook advertising to be successful with partnerships. It's not a lot of budget required. Really, the main component is the time required. So there needs to be some dedicated time to build and nurture these relationships. But, and I'll let Cara speak to this, as James Amplifier can take a lot of this off your plate. So Cara, I'll let you chime in a little bit.
Yeah, and if you're not aware, so your James Amplifier subscription includes partner outreach. Specifically, that means our phone team will set appointments for you with potential referral sources. So to Lauren's point, typically we're reaching out to attorneys in non-competing specialties, as well as professionals in your area who would commonly come across the type of client that you're looking for. So certainly if you're a bankruptcy attorney, for instance, we would be reaching out to other attorneys, as well as, possibly debt counselors in the area. State planning, we're reaching out to CPAs and accountants. Family law, we're really targeting marriage counselors and family therapists. Personal injury, medical professionals, chiropractors. So, I think you get the idea. But Lauren's absolutely right. It's the time and creating a system that really, those are kind of the challenges, right? So, I've talked to so many of you on the call, and just so many attorneys that, report referrals are, maybe your number one source of business, but very rarely do I hear from attorneys who have any kind of coordinated approach to generating referrals, specifically growing their referral network. So that's what we help you do. If you are not currently taking advantage of that, again, make sure you reach out to our customer success team. We'll get you set up with those quarterly appointments. We're basically the matchmaker, setting up the call. And then we're also helping you nurture those new relationships. Just like anything else, you have to stay top of mind. The whole goal is to get repeat business from these new referral sources. So also included is an ongoing professional newsletter. So this is separate from your past client newsletter that you get every month that we send out to your past clients. This is a newsletter that's geared specifically toward professionals, to attorneys. Basically in the newsletter, we're providing value, content that helps them grow their own firm, grow their own business, again, with the whole goal of keeping you top of mind. So partnerships, we've been very, very successful with setting referral partner appointments for our subscribers. So let us do that for you if we're not already doing it.
Yeah, I think this is one of the easiest ways to pursue partnerships because Amplifier's taking care of most of the hard work for you. You just have to show up to the appointment. And for every relationship you build, that could be 1, that could be 5, that could be 10 referrals that you're getting down the line. So it's really a highly leveraged channel, in my opinion. And oftentimes referrals convert much faster into clients, as you know, because they've already been pre-qualified, they've already been pre-vetted, and they come with a positive endorsement from your referral partner. So I think this is, in my opinion, a channel that almost everyone on this call should be pursuing if you aren't already. Okay, so another possible lead channel that you could consider is publicity or PR. And there are a lot of different ways to do this. You could go kind of the more traditional route. You could do some of the guest posting that I know we talked about. One of the attorneys doing Cara, where they're posting on some blogs and in the bankruptcy space. You could pay some influencers to in your niche to talk about you and your services. You could look at event sponsorships. PR, again, in my opinion, is only as good as your target market. So the broader you are, the harder it is going to be to get qualified leads from this. So you would have to be really targeted in your niche. Does it require a lot of time? It really depends on the type of publicity you're pursuing and what type of content you have to create for that. Does it require budget? Absolutely. That can range again. Is it an event sponsorship? Maybe very expensive, or it may not be expensive at all, depending on how big the event is, how established it is, and how established their sponsorship program is. This is not something James Amplifier provides, but it could potentially be something really interesting for you if you identify the right places to do publicity and PR. The challenge with this is it's not very consistent, in my opinion, because you may only have 3 places a year where this makes sense for you, but you can get a lot of people from this if it's the right event or the right piece of publicity. So I like to think of publicity as maybe not my first channel that I would implement if I were looking at a lead gen strategy, but something to layer on top of a lead gen channel that's already working for me. So this is if I want to get, from my standpoint, if I want to get a little more advanced, or I want to layer something on that's going to work well on top of maybe Google or referral partnerships.
Yeah. Lauren, I was going to mention too, we have a few subscribers who are pretty successful in offering, they're essentially an expert voice in articles, either in their local newspaper and, on blogs. This again, if you have the time to kind of, foster those relationships with local journalists or, business writers or anyone who might, be working on a piece who would need an attorney's quote or attorney's voice, that's a way to kind of get in too. And I know there are some services like Help a Reporter Out online, so if there are some other ways to kind of go about it other than just, the straight, write a press release and, try and get it syndicated. If you're the one kind of providing additional value and you can be kind of that voice of experience or just really that expert, that's another way to do it too.
Yeah. So for example, if I were a business attorney and I was able to establish a pretty solid relationship with my local Chamber of Commerce and become a guest speaker at some of their either virtual or offline events, that might be a really targeted piece of publicity that would work well for you for possibly a nominal fee. But I wouldn't just kind of, I wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to be featured in this newspaper and I have no idea who's going to be reading it. It's the whole town. And maybe I'll get some business from that. To me, that's not targeted enough to count on that as a solid source of leads. It's a nice experiment to run and see if it works, but I wouldn't consider that. There'd be a lot of risk in that, in my opinion. So it wouldn't be the only lead channel or lead gen opportunity I would have. Okay. Online paid advertising. So I know this is a very popular channel for attorneys. This could be Google AdWords. This could be Bing. This could be Facebook. This could be Display Network. There's a lot of opportunities here. And in terms of skill sets needed, I'd argue you need a pretty advanced skill set. You need someone who's really familiar with PPC and the channel that you're advertising on. Typically, it needs a fair amount of budget because you're paying that person plus the ad spend that your monthly ad spend. And then the time required is you often need someone in that account daily. So is this something typically that I recommend people do in-house? No, not unless they have a mentor or a very specific training guiding them. Typically, it's going to be something you outsource. So it can be very lucrative, especially if you are in an area with not a lot of competition and you're very specific in your niche. But if you're broad, it can be super expensive. Like personal injury is super expensive on Google, and you're paying, I don't know, $40 or more per click. That's not per lead, but per click. So if you don't have an extensive ad budget, the amount of traction you're going to be getting with that is pretty small. So that wouldn't, I would pursue online paid advertising if you're prepared to hire it out and prepared to spend. And the more specific you get with your target audience, the better. The other challenge with paid advertising is we're thinking about moving people through those stages of awareness. And oftentimes I see this mistake happen a lot where we just say, oh, we are only targeting people who are ready now. And a lot of people are searching online, but they're not yet ready now. And we don't have a way to capture them ahead of time. So if you're going to do some paid advertising, I would think about some very specific landing pages that the CTA is not just call me now or fill out this form, but also, hey, download our free FAQ booklet. I think that's a way that I would boost results from online paid advertising. So Cara, I know you talk to a lot of people who do PPC, so
yeah, I mean, definitely, the biggest gripe is the kind of unqualified leads, the high volume of unqualified leads, right? So then, our attorneys are left really sifting through. Their time is wasted, or, if they happen to have a screener on staff, whoever it is, to Lauren's point, you're going basically straight for the appointment or straight for the call in many cases, sometimes just sending people to your homepage. So that, when it's not a targeted, funnel that really is kind of drawing them through, you're going to generate a lot of unqualified prospects, and then that can be very time consuming. So we always suggest, like, you just have to be really careful with any sort of online paid advertising, that you're not just blowing through your budget, and it's a kind of a constant monitoring too.
Yeah, and things can change really quickly. So you may find like the cost per lead was, I don't know, $10 last week, and then now all of a sudden it's $20 or $30, and all of a sudden your investment has tripled, especially on social. There's a lot of algorithm changes with Facebook, privacy laws, all sorts of stuff. Q4 of 2020 was a really difficult time for anyone advertising on Facebook. Cost per lead just got really expensive overall. So it can be a really interesting place to advertise, especially if you're thinking about those problem-aware prospects who know they have a problem and they're searching for answers. But I would consider, for example, if you're doing paid advertising right now or considering it, okay, how do I have those two options to qualify leads? One is people who are just looking but not yet ready for an appointment, and the other is an appointment. And that way you're sifting through without requiring manpower on the back end to sift through. So you're sifting through upfront the quality of the leads.
That's good advice. Yep.
Yeah. And as you guys are listening, feel free to drop any questions about specific lead gen channels, and we can talk more about that. Okay, SEO. SEO can be a really great lead gen channel. Again, if you're very specific with your target audience, or there's little competition in your geography. So there's a couple different types of SEO. We have local SEO and then just general SEO. And I'll talk about both in a second, but in terms of skill sets needed, you need someone who understands SEO, who can create content for you, because SEO now is mainly about content and the quality of your content. You need someone who knows how to build links, quality links. It's not about farming out link building to an outsourcer and saying, hey, build me as many links as possible. No, it's about building the right links. In terms of budget required, while this can feel less expensive than paid advertising, I often find it's actually not that much. It can be about the same budget because you have to hire someone very experienced. You have to hire content writers. And I don't actually find that to be that inexpensive if you're going to do SEO right. Where I find you can save some money on SEO is if you're doing local SEO. So there you're just building reviews and building listings. Doesn't take someone that advanced to do that. There's lots of software that can do that for you. So that can be a really great way to dip your toes in SEO and show up in that maps listing that you see in organic search. In terms of time required, I don't find the payoff for this happens right away. It can be 6 months, 12 months before you start to see results. And it takes a lot of time. So in terms of an in-house versus outsource effort, I find this could be both, depending on the skill sets that you have on the team. So maybe you, the attorney, are creating the content because you can't find anyone else who can create the same kind of content for you, but someone else is building links, publishing, helping you collect online reviews. Cara, I'll let you chat a little bit about SEO, what you're seeing, and kind of the results you're seeing. And actually, before I let you do that, I'm also going to say one thing. People sometimes target the wrong keywords, in my opinion. You might see there's a lot of traffic for a keyword, but there's really no purchase intent on the back end of that keyword. So you may be listing number one for something that's not very competitive, that's related to your niche, but it's just a tire kicker who's looking at that keyword. They're not saying, oh, personal injury attorney who specifies in motor vehicle accidents. Maybe it's just 7 ways to get reimbursed for my injury. We don't see any purchase intent in that. So if you're going to invest in SEO, you also want to be looking at what keywords have more purchase intent and therefore are more likely to drive qualified leads my way.
Yeah, I mean, probably what I hear most is, our attorneys just have trouble kind of gauging the effectiveness of their SEO campaigns that their agency is providing. In other words, what they're just unsure, if things are working, if things are converting, right? So, they might receive, high-level reporting from their agency that says, yeah, website visitors, website traffic is increasing. How does that drop to your bottom line though, right? So I think that's definitely what I hear the most often is just, I'm not sure, a lot of the attorneys I talk to have worked with several agencies in the past. There's a lot of unqualified agencies. SEO certainly has its place, and there are some wonderful, high quality attorney law firm, focused SEO agencies out there. But on the flip side, it's not always easy to find those folks. So Lauren, maybe you can talk on that a little bit. Like, how do I know if, what I'm investing in is worth it and if it's working?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's frustrating to see like, oh, my traffic's increasing, but I don't feel like I'm getting leads. So if we're looking at SEO, what I'd really want to do is have tracking for both calls and any forms that are being filled out, whether it's your lead magnet, whether it's a contact form, so that you can really look in Google Analytics and you can ask your agency that you're working with, okay, how many calls did organic generate for me? How many form submissions did it generate for me? And how many lead magnet downloads did it generate for me? You can do this in Google Analytics pretty easily using goal tracking, but then you're having a different conversation and a conversation that is more focused around the bottom line than, oh, you got 1,000 new hits this month, because that doesn't really tell you, am I getting any leads from this effort? And I will say goal tracking isn't precise. Sometimes there can be, maybe you see that you got 10 calls, but maybe it was 9, but it at least gives you a much better idea than if you had no goal tracking in place. So that would be my best recommendation. It shouldn't take your agency that long to set up goal tracking. So If you're investing in SEO right now, that's the next thing I would do after this call is just say, hey, can you implement some goal tracking for me? I'd love to see calls, form submissions, and lead magnet downloads.
Yeah, that's great. And anyone on this call, if you are shopping for an SEO agency, reach out to me or Mike directly. Mike was actually involved in drafting most effective law firm agency book for us too. So we can definitely provide you that and provide you with some very specific recommendations. I mean, we're not directly affiliated with these agencies, but it's really important to us that, if you are investing and, driving more traffic to your site, let's make sure you're working with a reputable agency.
I think that's fabulous. And, also consider what type of SEO should I pursue now? Is it local to start with? And then I focus more on the general organic listings, or am I going to pursue both at the same time? And a lot of that depends on the budget that you have available. Okay, offline ads. So I know we're here to talk about online marketing, but I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. So there are offline ads you can place in print publications, on billboards, on TV, on radio. In terms of skill sets needed, I would say not a whole lot. You just have to be able to create the ad. Budget required can vary depending on the publication. Time required, not often that much on your part. Kind of the place that you're advertising will take care of most of that. Again, my strong recommendation here is the more specific you can get with where you're advertising, the better. So for me, a billboard isn't very specific for the most part, because you're just, on the side of the road somewhere and you're hoping that you're going to capture and interrupt the right person with a billboard. But for example, let's say you advertise on the radio or on a podcast that's very specific to your niche and who you're serving. That could be a fabulous place for you to generate leads. So Cara, you told me that some people are advertising on billboards and in print publications. So maybe you can speak a little more about that.
Yeah, oftentimes actually they're coming to us, talking to me after one of these outlets, hasn't really been too fruitful, right? So it tends to be expensive, all of these, right? Tends to be much less targeted, like you said. And the feedback that I've received generally is, it's just not working. Maybe they pulled out of the Yellow Pages recently. It worked for years, decades. It may have been, really driving the leads, and, it dried up pretty quickly. So, that typically tends to be the conversation. It's, this is no longer working, or this has become too expensive. I'm not seeing the return on these kind of larger, offline advertising opportunities. I want to get more focused. So.
Yeah. So one tip I have here that I've seen clients do really well with is, maybe there was a publication that was working for them well offline, but now they have an email list, and you can pay to get placement in their email list when they send out, I don't know, their weekly email. And you can hit a lot of people that way and get a much better ROI by taking that ad to email. So that could be one option for you. If you're looking at offline ads, that would actually be an online ad, but it's a way for you to get in front of that same audience and pay to get in front of that same audience. Okay. So next up, speaking of email, is email marketing. So we talked about this a lot in the last session, but I find email to be one of the best returns on investment in terms of marketing, no matter where else you're marketing. It's typically not top of funnel, meaning people may download your lead magnet first and then move to email, but email takes them from problem aware all the way down to a client. And it really helps nurture that relationship. So, in terms of skill sets, oftentimes the challenge is, how do I need to create content, I need to send it out through a specific technology, and someone needs to be able to manage that. In this case, James Amplifier has taken care of all that for you. Budget is, you just have to be able to create the content and hit send. And in terms of time required, it's actually a fairly fast process for the most part. So Cara, I'd love if you could, or I could pass it to Mike if, if you want to pass the baton along, but just speak a little bit about Amplifier's email marketing options and what people should know about everything that's happening for them behind the scenes here.
Yeah, of course. So as most of you probably know, this is a huge part of your Amplifier subscription. And kind of going along with this common theme, that Lauren's been presenting, the more targeted and the more kind of customized you can create, the messaging that you can create in your email, the better. So just to be clear, you have full, comprehensive, built out drip sequences, nurturing campaigns, email sequences for every phase of the client life cycle, right? So we're packing all of those educational booklets and all of the books and all of the content that you gain access to. We're packing that all into these comprehensive educational drip sequences, of course, for your prospects, as they come through any channel, certainly as they're requesting that FAQ lead magnet that we've hopefully installed on your website. They're being automatically entered into this drip sequence, and prospects first are getting the shock and awe package, right? That's the impressive wow package, really sets you apart, includes your 100-page book, a couple booklets, cover letter, kind of, describing, what to expect, kind of what the process is like. That's all included in that shock and awe, and then they're entered into this drip campaign. You're already taking advantage of that, hopefully, as an Amplifier subscriber, but the whole point of why we created it this way is you have to automate it, right? There has to be that level of automation. You would never be able to kind of manually keep up with all of this varying communication. So important to target your prospects, your new clients, and your past clients all in different ways. The newsletter is kind of what anchors that past client email sequence. So email marketing is, massively effective. It really is. Lauren, maybe you can talk to this, because I hear a lot, well, aren't all of our inboxes just exploding? Does anyone really read email anymore? I hear that a lot. What do you say to that?
Yeah. Well, I say two things. That there's been numerous studies, and almost every study shows that people are opening emails, and for every dollar you invest in email marketing, on average, you get about $40 on the back end. Now, that varies from industry to industry and business to business, depending on how you're doing email marketing. But for the most part, as long as you're sending valuable, informative content that people are interested in, then email works for you. If you're sending me something I'm not interested in, then I'm going to ignore your email, and I might even throw it in spam. But in this case, James Amplifier's done a lot of the heavy lifting for you, because they've created all of this content to serve your target audience, and they really know what are they interested in, what questions are they asking, and what do they need to move from prospect to appointment. So the short answer is, in my opinion, email marketing is something that should be layered on top of anything else you're doing. So whether you're doing PPC, whether you're doing SEO, whether you're doing some sort of offline ad, you're really trying to drive someone to your email list so you can keep following up and build that relationship until they're ready to become a client.
And what if the attorney doesn't have much of an email list? What do they do then?
Yeah, so that's where I would look at, okay, in addition to email marketing, which one of these channels am I going to use to drive more traffic that's going to convert into email subscribers? So if we're just reliant on people magically finding our website online to grow our email list, that's often not going to be effective or fast. So we really need to think about, how are we sending qualified eyeballs to that email list? And in this case, for example, let's say you've identified this guest posting opportunity that's going to get in front of 3,000 people that could be qualified prospects. That's one effort that you can do to grow your list. So you really do need to have at least one lead gen channel that's focused on growing your email list.
Good, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so next up we have content marketing. Lots of options here. You could create a blog, you could have a podcast, you could do webinars, you could create videos. There are so many ways to use content as a marketing channel. And really what content does is it establishes your authority. It lets prospects know, oh, this firm knows what they're talking about. It builds trust. We don't hire people we don't trust. So you really want to demonstrate not only am I someone who knows what they're talking about, but I'm also someone trustworthy who's going to have your back and really, take your case on and make you feel like, hey, this attorney is supporting me and taking care of me. So in terms of content marketing and what type is best for you, a lot of it depends on how often you want to create content, what you're trying to do with that content. So for example, if you have a blog can go hand in hand really nicely with SEO because you're creating the content and then you're looking for search terms that have a lot of traffic and purchase intent, and then building links to that content. A podcast is different. A podcast, people, listen on their own time. You don't need a lot of graphics. You just need to be able to speak, but you do need someone to be able to edit for you. And you do need to release a podcast typically weekly to get any sort of traction for it. And you need to be able to build listeners. So a lot of content marketing depends on what are the skill sets that you have available at your disposal, whether it's you or your team or an outsource effort, and how much money and time do you want to invest in that effort. So for example, Amplifier does provide the option to create videos and use that in a lot of your marketing channels. So that could be on your website, that could be in some of these emails, but it's really a great opportunity to create a piece of content and people to see your face and see how you speak and see how you would be representing them in the courtroom, or maybe you're not in the courtroom, but I think there's some really interesting things here that you can do alongside James Amplifier that don't require as much time. So for example, a webinar can be a really great piece of content marketing, but it can take a long time to refine it. It can take a long time to know what's going to resonate with people, and you have to be able to drive people live to that webinar. Whereas a video lives on your site, lives in your emails, and that can be sort of evergreen. So you have to think a little bit about the constraints and time that you have available when you're thinking about how do I use content marketing as a lead gen channel for my firm. So Car, do you want to just chat a little bit about the video marketing feature, what's available, how it works, how to get on the schedule?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just briefly explain. So we are now offering custom video if you're unaware. So let us know if you're interested. Essentially what we're doing is we're helping you build a library of videos, answering common questions, describing, kind of what initially attracted you to the law, kind of your approach, who you are as an attorney, who you are as a person. The custom video element has honestly quickly become one, if not the most popular feature of our Amplifier program, especially in the pandemic. You're likely seeing fewer prospects face-to-face, fewer clients face-to-face. So video, it's really the easiest way to distinguish yourself. We feel like we're evening the playing field a bit with our custom video option. It's not, tens of thousands of dollars that, you typically seem to be kind of reserved for those larger firms. What we do, we virtually shoot your videos. So specifically, we are hosting 4 video shoots, 1 video shoot per quarter. For each video shoot, we're getting enough footage for 3 videos. That equates to 1 custom video delivered to you each month. So one of the most popular areas is now, we're helping our attorneys describe past cases in the videos, right? So you're building this library of kind of varying fact patterns so that when prospects come to your site and they're able to watch you talk about a situation that is very similar to the one that they're experiencing, obviously that trust is built, pretty much instantly. And they say, oh, okay, Mark has handled a case very similar, to what I'm going through. Obviously he's the expert in this area. So if you're interested, reach out to our customer success team. We'll give you more details and get you on the calendar.
And so just one note on content marketing, what used to be more of a quantity game, I feel like now is more of a quality game. So if you're looking at this channel, I would consider, how can I produce a quality piece of content, whether it's a blog, a podcast, a webinar, or a video, that's going to move a prospect to a client, rather than let me publish one blog post, 5 blog posts a week that are short, really don't offer a lot of value. That doesn't really do a lot for you in terms of SEO. So really think about it as more of a quality game than a quantity game. So for example, one of the kind of SEO gurus, Brian Dean, I think he only publishes once every month or once every quarter, and he has tons of traffic. And that's because he takes a long time to publish a really long form article or study. Takes, I think he said, between 40 and 50 hours it takes him to create that piece of content, but it drives hundreds of thousands of visitors to his site. Now he's in a completely different niche, but what they found is even the number of links is becoming less and less relevant right now. And it's more about time on page. What is the user experience like? Is your website traffic hitting that page and then bouncing, or are they sticking around and staying on there for 5 minutes? So these on-page factors are weighing into SEO a lot, for example. So if you're going to use content marketing paired with SEO, that's just one thing to consider, is less is more and focus on quality. Okay.
Great. That's a great takeaway.
Yeah. So I do want to highlight, we may go a few minutes long. So if you have to leave early, that's okay. We will send out the recording just because I'm working through each of these channels. And I want to make sure you guys get all of this information. Okay. So next up, we have organic social media. Skill sets needed. You, again, also need to be able to create content. You need someone to post. You need to be consistent. There is some budget typically required with this because you have to have graphics alongside written content. You have to think about your whole calendar. Time required. If you were to hire this out, at least a couple hours each week, if not more. In this case, this is a feature from Amplifier that is coming, if I'm correct, Cara.
Yeah, so we're really excited about this. We expect it to be available within the next 30 days. We're kind of tying up some loose ends. It's been in development for quite a while, so we're really excited. Essentially, it will be kind of opt-in, opt-out. If you are interested in getting social media content, let us know, and essentially we'll be posting on your behalf 1 post per week to both Facebook and LinkedIn. And again, much of the social media content will be sort of rooted in the educational materials, the branded books and booklets that you receive. But we've also peppered in some nice kind of more general interest posts that kind of encourage engagement, some questions, some interesting kind of lifestyle items as well. So it's a really great way to, so often I talk to attorneys who say, I know I need to be on social. I have no idea what to post. I don't have time. This is just a pretty, no-brainer way, another way to kind of get that content out, get the content in front of more eyeballs.
I think that's great and takes away one of the big pain points of social media. And you're driving people to their email list, which in my opinion is the whole purpose of social media, to take someone from an anonymous eyeball to someone whose contact information you have and you can keep following up with them. So I think it's just such a great asset that you guys have this available for your subscribers.
Yeah, and video is so perfect for social, right? So those kind of go hand in glove. If you're spending the time to produce these videos, let's make sure that we're also, getting them out there wherever we can.
Yeah, and plus, like, let's say you're doing paid advertising on Facebook, for example, and you're sending traffic to a video, that can be a lot cheaper because you're just targeting for video views instead of cost per click. And so you can use that, and I'm trying not to get too lingo-y, but you can use that top of funnel. And then on the back end of that, show someone who's watched the video up to 10 seconds, you can show them your FAQ booklet, and then your cost per lead can become a lot cheaper. So if you're working with an agency on your PPC, this can be a great asset for them to use too and drive more traffic your way. Okay, so next up, I'm just going to highlight this quickly because we talked about it a little bit, but speaking or teaching opportunities in front of your target audience is another great way to indoctrinate people into your approach, your system, and how you can help them. In terms of skill sets needed, you just need to be able to speak knowledgeably about who you help and how you help them. Budget required, sometimes you can pay for this, but oftentimes it can be free. You find where your audience spends their time and you offer your services to that organization and can get in front of their audience who they've already spent time and money building, and you're just showing up and presenting your expertise. It can take some time to find the right opportunities to prepare your speech, but I really love this as a leveraged marketing channel because you may be spending an hour speaking and then 300 people know about you. So for me, again, the key here is be very specific in your target market and which speaking opportunities you are pursuing. Cara, you mentioned a lot of, or some attorneys are doing this and doing it pretty successfully. Is there anything that you can share about that?
Well, yeah, specifically, estate planning attorneys who are hosting, workshops or seminars. A lot of those folks have taken them online, of course, because of the pandemic, but that can be a way of, really bringing your target audience into your, like Lauren says, into your kind of sphere of influence, into your world, by providing valuable information, right? So that's probably the most popular area that I, see this working for referral purposes, hosting CLE courses, for other attorneys, that can be opportunity to kind of just increase your exposure and provide value to other attorneys who could be, of course, referral sources for you. But this does tend to be time consuming. So it's kind of, weighing that and balancing, you have to promote you have to get people to actually, attend and listen, right? So I think that can be the challenge too. If it fits in, with your personality and your kind of internal resources, then it could be a nice little, added bump, I think.
And if you are doing speaking, I really like pairing it with mentioning your lead magnet and giving a link to it at the end. So your FAQ booklet, because again, we want to turn these people into email subscribers that all the follow-ups happen automatically, and it doesn't take, it's already created for you from James Amplifier. So you just have to put that in front of them. So that would be something to consider if you are pursuing speaking opportunities already and want to dial up the number of leads that you're getting on the back end of that. Okay, this one I'm going to also mention briefly. It's not right for everyone. Community building. Basically, you're building a group of people around a specific topic. So let's say, you are a business attorney and you want to build a community of business owners. And then you have this one-to-many format where you can generate leads, but you have to be present in the community frequently. You typically have to organize events. So while maybe you don't need a lot of skill sets besides being personable and being able to build relationships, there can be a lot of time required in terms of community building. So again, I often don't find it's right for everyone. It really depends on, does my target audience like to spend time in communities and networking with other people in their same niche? Okay, client referrals. So I like to think of client referrals, and a lot of you mentioned this being a primary source of new business, but as both offline endorsements and online reviews, because if someone's reviewing you online, they're also giving a referral to anyone who's looking for you online. So I know the offline endorsements are already happening, but Cara, how can someone build their online reviews through James Amplifier with their current and past clients?
Yeah, so we are offering a review service now. So if you're interested in adding that on, again, contact us. Essentially, we will help you reach out to your past clients to ask for reviews. Specifically, we're recommending Google reviews. So you have to ask, right? Sometimes that's the biggest challenge is again, like everything else, kind of having that system, kind of building it into your process, as you're wrapping a case, will help you, get those reviews. But not only is it important to have positive reviews, it's important to kind of continually get fresh reviews. So that's what we help you do on an ongoing basis. And we've had good success in the past, really boosting numbers of positive online reviews. We have a simple system that gauges sentiment kind of before sending them on to kind of the open public review forum, Google in this case. So, if we send an email to your past clients and they report, they weren't, quite so happy with your service, we'll just send them to, a kind of private review space where they can maybe air their grievances, give you some good feedback that maybe you could learn from. And that will be that. But as long as they report, which I'm sure the vast majority of your clients will report that, they would recommend you, then we go ahead and send them on to Google for them to post that review. So as I'm sure Lauren can attest to, reviews are just becoming more and more and more important from a local SEO perspective, as well as just a kind of reputation, overall. Who doesn't look at reviews before really we buy anything at this point, right? So attorneys are it's the same with law firms. So yeah, let us know if you're interested in us building your positive online reviews, and we'll get it set up.
Great. Okay, another lead gen channel possibility would be direct mail. This is offline. Your target audience has to be within a specific geography, and you have to know that not only are they within a specific geography, but they're potentially interested in your services. So for example, might this work for estate planning because you're targeting, for example, a higher income geography and you want to get your estate planning services in front of them? Yes, I think that would be great. Would I use direct mail for personal injury? Probably not, because the timing, you'd say, hey, some people in here, I hope they have had an accident and they're looking for an attorney. And so there's too much risk in that. So direct mail really depends on your target audience, what problem you're solving. Skill sets needed. You need a graphic designer. You also need someone who understands direct mail. Budget required, not the most expensive thing. You can often get eyeballs for a lot less than you can with PPC, but you have to make sure that it's the right eyeballs. And I think that's where direct mail can be a bit tricky. Time required, you just have to be able to create those creatives, and then they get mailed out by the post office. So the post office is doing most of that work for you. Cara or Mike, is there anyone who's doing direct mail that you guys have spoken with that have had success in the attorney space?
At this point, it's mostly, if they're sending anything, it's a newsletter. Yeah. Through the mail, which tends to, still be successful in, keeping top of mind. If you're interested in sending your digital newsletter that we produce for you every month, if you're interested in sending it through the mail, maybe you have a decent sized postal, list, we can do that for you. We essentially charge, printing and postage, and we can handle that for you. So we do that for a handful of our subscribers. So let us know. Outside of that, some jail mail stuff, but not really anything that is too effective anymore.
Yeah, once or twice, especially with our more long-term subscribers, I've heard of campaigns that they're running where they're trying to actually get email addresses through direct mail. So it's a kind of a solicitation effort. They're going to offer a lead magnet. Here's something that I created. You might want to see it. Will you trade me your email address? I'll send it to you. Unfortunately, it hasn't been very effective from what I've heard. That kind of direct, I would like this. Can you trade me this? It hasn't been that effective. But outside of what Cara said in terms of those newsletters, that's really the only other thing that I'm aware of at the moment.
Yeah. I do like the possibility of sending newsletters because you're kind of combining retargeting with, let me send you a valuable piece of content because someone's already raised their hand and said they're interested, versus let me just kind of spray and pray all over this one geography. So it could be interesting if you're looking at like, how do I retarget the people who are already interested in what I have to offer?
Right.
Okay. Conversion rate optimization. This is, how do I look at my website? How do I convert more leads from the existing traffic I have? We've talked a lot about this in the past couple sessions. So adding a lead magnet, adding a qualifying form. I highly recommend you look at the first marketing mentor session if you didn't attend that. You can also add live chat, pop-ups to promote your lead magnet. And then another key aspect of conversion rate optimization is, what am I saying on my website? Am I speaking to my audience, or am I speaking all about me and not really explaining how I can help them? Oftentimes, we think that using a lot of lingo or talking about a lot about us and our qualifications is compelling, but inherently people are selfish beings, and we care about ourselves and how you can, as the attorney, can solve our problems. So the more you can speak to your target audience's pain point, and it can be a great way to boost conversions on your website and with your already existing traffic. It can be time consuming, so I don't recommend spending a lot of time on this unless you have a decent amount of traffic. If you don't have a lot of traffic, what I would just make sure is that you have a pop-up on your site leading to the FAQ booklet, which you should have through James Amplifier, and potentially adding live chat. Once you get more traffic, then I would look at maybe some copy redo on your website. This is kind of a balance here in terms of, you know, what resources do you have at your availability and how much traffic are you already getting? Okay, and last but not least, contests and giveaways. You may see this a lot outside of the attorney space. The way this works is you run a contest, you try and collect a bunch of emails, and then you sort through those emails for the qualified leads and try and convert those into customers. You know, this really depends on your target audience, who you're trying to help and how you're helping them. I could see this working well, for example, if you have a contract service and you're giving away a contract template and you're running this through the Chamber of Commerce, and you're saying, hey, out of all the 100 members here, one of you will win one of my contract templates. And you're using that as a way to get in front of, you know, the 100 members of the Chamber of Commerce, collecting their email and then running them through a sequence. But I think contests are really only right for the right audience, and depending on what you're offering on the back end of that. It would be really hard to run a contest for a bankruptcy attorney. Like, win a consult with a bankruptcy attorney. Probably not a lot of people are going to advertise that they're entering that contest, nor feel very good about entering that contest. So I really think about your audience, and is this the right channel for them? Okay, so here you have a lot of lead gen channels to work with. I hope you have some clarity on skill sets needed, budget required, time required, and whether this would be an in-house or outsourced effort. And you can see that James Amplifier is doing a lot of these channels for you already. So when you think about 2021, or even just the next 90 days, what I would encourage you to think about is, what 1 to 2 of these channels can you start, given your current constraints, given your budget available, given your time, and given who would be responsible for this. As I mentioned in the beginning, you know, it can be a lot to do, even 2 channels. So we really don't want to spread ourselves too thin, and we want to give one channel enough time and enough effort to see whether it's working or not and collect feedback. So even, for example, as we were talking about SEO, you'll see that I mentioned having goal tracking in place so that you know what effect the SEO is having on your bottom line. And when we spread ourselves too thin, we really don't get to do any channels very well. So I'd love to know in the chat, for anyone who's still here, what 1 to 2 of these channels would you start, or would you continue over the next 90 days or even throughout the whole year, given your current constraints?
I love the recommendation of starting small, right? I mean, because sometimes it can just feel so overwhelming, and you know, you have to start somewhere. Sometimes that's the biggest hurdle, is just, you know, kind of deciding where that lowest hanging fruit is, and then kind of moving forward.
Yeah, and also sometimes I find people are pursuing the wrong channel for them. You know, hey, I'd like to work on PPC, but I only have a $300 a month ads budget. Okay, well, you're just not going to get very far with that. So let's look at something that's a little more leveraged, doesn't require as many funds, or even that kind of skill set. And let's look at some speaking opportunities, because we may be able to get you in front of the same number of people with just 3 speaking opportunities. Okay, so Mark saying social media organic. Awesome, Mark.
We'll get you hooked up, Mark.
Yeah, we'll definitely have more details for you.
Okay, so as people are typing, I just want to leave you with this quote. Peter Thiel, the guy behind PayPal, he just said, if you can get even a single distribution channel to work, you have a great business. And if you try for several but don't nail one, you're finished. So it's worth thinking really hard about finding the single best distribution channel. So I urge you to make marketing one of the #1 priorities of your firm. Consistent and predictable lead flow is the key to better business growth. So I hope you'll keep attending these sessions. We are going to be diving in to the specifics behind some of these lead channels, as well as doing some additional education. So we're here to support you as you think about how do I create consistent and predictable lead flow and what channels are going to be best for me. And just to summarize, we talked initially about lead qualification in our first session. Our second session was about lead nurturing. Today was all about lead gen, and then we're going to be deep diving into lead gen over the next few sessions. So our next session is on Thursday, February 18th at the same time. You will get a few invitations to RSVP. If you can't make it live, you can always watch the recording. And I know Cara or Mike are also running some sessions for you. And maybe you guys can just speak to that really quickly before we let everyone sign off.
Yeah, so you'll also be hearing from us. Mike and I will be hosting in early February subscriber success calls similar to this, but we're really going to be diving into Amplifier itself, helping you get the most out of the program, and then answering any specific questions that you have, making it really kind of a high-level strategy session.
Okay, well, I really thank you guys for being in here, hanging in for a longer session than we've had in the past. If you have any questions, I know you can reach out to Cara or Mike or your customer success team. And I look forward to seeing you guys in a month.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks, everyone else.